Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Strategy Talks and Mechanics Guide series. In this episode, we are going over something that I think is rather interesting, a rather difficult concept to really discuss, and that is the legendary beasts. Now, the legendary beasts have one of the more complicated skills in the game, and it really is difficult to actually explain how this skill works and how to best min-max it. So let's just dive right in to what makes the skill, what it does, and how to best min-max it. Now, Helper Boost, and also, I want to start this off by saying, everybody knows about berry bombing. I have a different video about berry bombing. I'll link a video in the description of this video. If I forget, please remind me in the comments. But I have a different video on berry bombing. Berry bombing is the primary function that these Pokemon get by a lot of players that play this game. And it is seen as their primary function, but I know that there are a lot of people out there that try to make the best out of them, and really make them be their team captain, sort of, especially since they were the first legendary Pokemon in the game. A lot of people wanted to use the things that the game gave them, and make good use out of them. So, the question that I'm proposing here today is how viable are the legendary beasts outside of the context of berry bombing? Can you effectively use them just in a general context, or as a kind of like a generalist or a berry specialist? How do they actually work? And can you make good use out of them? Now, this skill is very complicated, as it gets boosted by having more species on the team. And if you look across it, ideally you're operating at skill level 6. You're not going to be using a skill specialist without maxing out its main skill level. Otherwise, it's pretty much always going to be worse than running another ingredient or berry specialist. So, but what's something very interesting here, until skill level 6, the base value of the skill actually only goes up by 1 every 2 levels, but the scaling goes up more in between levels. You can see with 3 species, it's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 4 species is 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So, the scaling goes up just a little bit more with the in-between levels, and that's where the difference is. So every level still does make a difference if you're matching synergy, if you're having a matching type. And level 6 is obviously the best because, well, first off, you get the raw 5 without any other fire types or electric or water types on the team. It's naturally going to be doing the best just at the base rate with skill level 6. Big shocker there. Not at all. But we can see that there's a bigger jump from certain numbers to others. So like 1 to 2 species doesn't make that big of a difference. And in fact, at lower skill levels, it makes literally no difference. Until you get to skill level 5 at a minimum. But then you see from 2 to 3, it jumps by 2 for most levels of the main skill. 1 to 2 for most levels of the main skill. So, it's a bit more impactful to have 2 additional species alongside the legend than it is to just have 1 additional. But going from 3 to 4, it only jumps up by 1 again, so there's not as big of an impact. 4 to 5, there's another difference of 2. So, the biggest impacts are felt when running 3 species or running 5 species. So running just 2 really doesn't cut it, and running 4, there's not that much of a gain, so unless the Pokemon really likes running alongside of it, running 4 different species probably isn't going to be that beneficial. And this concept kind of can come in when you look at how to min-max them. Now, the first one I want to talk about is Entei. Entei is interesting because, as you can see here, well, there's no healer option, and realistically, I've run the numbers, it's really difficult to justify not running a healer, even for a 5th species. You can, and it kind of works, but healing is so impactful in this game that it would need to be a pretty good Pokemon that you're running in here instead. And for the sake of this analysis, I wanted to just make what I consider reasonable stats, or like the minimum investment. Realistically, if you're trying to invest one of these legends, hopefully you have better stats than just Skill Trigger M and Help Speed M. But I think of Skill Trigger M as Help Speed M as like the usable, like where you can hunt it, and if you get that, it's kind of worth investment. That's like the minimum that I'd consider investable. And Berry Finding S alone on a Berry Specialist is what I put as like the bare minimum. And when it comes to Ingredient Specialist, it's Ingredient Finding M, Help Speed M. But if we look across here, you can see that this is 4 species, because having a healer immediately makes it that we're not going to hit 5. So, how does this turn out? Well, if we're at Top Hollow, my assessment here is 3.98 million, basically 4 million Snorlax strength, which is pretty good. And that's if we're running a Quilava with a maxed out ribbon. Now, it is better than, it's almost the same actually, slightly better than running 2 Typhlosions. And that partially comes down to the fact that 4, like I said, is not nearly as good as the difference between 2 and 3 different species. So it's not worth it to run 3 Typhlosions alongside it, especially since Ninetales does exist. And if we compare all of these to just running 4 Typhlosions and a healer, which nobody has this would be impractical. Nobody has this many candies. But theoretically, if you did, what's the opportunity cost? Is the Entei worth it? Well, it does come out to be stronger than just running Berry Specialists with the Berry Finding S, the minimum investable. And that is alongside the Gardevoir for like 3.7 million. I do have to apologize. I forgot to go into Do Not Disturb mode, so sorry for anyone that got faked out by a Discord notification there. Okay, I'm in Do Not Disturb mode now for this recording session. Okay, so it does actually perform pretty well. Now, as a generalist, if we clear all boosts, then 2.34 million versus if we made these guys that way 2.206 million. Still semi-decent, still performing better than the 4 Berry Specialists. Something that I actually didn't think to do was compare it to a team of all generalists. So let's just throw this together real quick and see how it compares. I made a lot of comparisons, as you can see there briefly. We'll make sure to set the override right. Please stand by. I also was running with Good Camp Ticket, I guess, for framework. Let's just test it out with Ampharos. I actually don't know how this is going to perform. I'm assuming this is going to be better because these are the best generalists in the game, but we could always test it. 2.8 million. So yes, it's not necessarily worth using in a generalist sense, but if you use it in a Berry Specialist sense, it almost does kind of work when you have the right synergies. This is theoretically the best that you can get, but getting the 2,000 out ribbon on Quilava takes a long time, so I'd really probably just suggest looking to using 2 Typhlosions. It's not that much worse than using the Quilava, although the Quilava has the added benefit that if you're looking to Berry Bomb, then this is going to do significantly better, which is why you might consider keeping a Quilava around if you are using an Entei, if you ever intend to Berry Bomb. Now, something very notable about Entei specifically is that it pairs with Charizard, and I paired it up with Ninetales here, and just for the sake of throwing together this team, once again, you got 3 species, pretty reliable, and something that the Legendary's main skill is very good at doing is taking advantage of high ingredient rate ingredient specialists, because it's forcing a flat number of procs, so realistically, Pokemon that are typically held back by their lower speed, but have a really high ingredient rate, like ingredient specialists that are balanced in that way, do phenomenally well with this, especially also higher strength berries synergize well with it, but obviously matching the same berry type is going to do better. But Dragonite is a Pokemon that it's got okay speed. It's not bad speed by any means. In fact, for a Dragon Berry Pokemon, it's got very respectable speed. But it's still middling speed. It is balanced by being held back by its middling speed. Alongside a Pokemon that forces a flat number of procs for helps, it produces insane amounts of herbs and corn, especially if you have the ABA list. You can see here that running the Entei with it, and then having the 3 fire types, it's producing well over enough corn and herbs to reliably make Corn Keema Curry. And what's nice with that is that it pairs very, very well with Charizard and ABA list, also producing flat ingredients, flat number of helps, to make the Corn Keema Curry, which can make On Top Hollow, 4 million Snorlax strength. Anywhere else, 3.2 million. That's nearly Master 20. With just having a pretty basic team, this general core, along with the Entei, very powerful options here. I think it is something to consider if you have a good Entei. Now, Entei is probably the most basic one to go over because there's nothing to consider with healers. It also has a lot of berry specialist options, which I think gives it a little bit more variability and flexibility. It's got one obvious standout power pair that includes one of its typings. It's very easy to optimize the Entei. The other two are not so simple. And let's get into Suicune. Now, Suicune is difficult because it only has one berry specialist available to it. And you can theoretically run the entire evolutionary line to get 4, but once again, running 4, there's running a Totodile, even if you get a 2,000-hour ribbon on a Totodile, you can see that it's significantly weaker than its evolutions. And that opportunity cost, just to get the extra boost on the main skill, is not worth it compared to even just running 3 for Alligator, I think. Oh yeah, it is a little bit better than running 3 for Alligator alongside of it. But if we compare to 2 for Alligator and a Croconaw, this is the nice balance. You're hitting that 3 different species where you get the biggest bump up in the main skill level. But you're not running a Totodile, you're running a Croconaw instead, which is a little bit weaker, but it boosts the main skill. So if you're really trying to optimize around a Suicune that you've caught and you want to just make raw berries, that's like the best combo that you're going to have set up. And if we compare that to just running 4 for Alligators at Cyan, it is better. It does come out to be decently stronger by about 300,000 strength, according to these calculations. Now, if you don't quite have the 2,000-hour ribbon, and you only have a 500-hour, which is a bit more achievable, 3.7 million is still quite a bit stronger than 3.5 million. And it's even stronger than the 3.6 million. That would be the Suicune with 3 for Alligators. So, Suicune gets a pass for filling in or taking a spot of another berry specialist if you have a good one. They are somewhat viable with the favored berry. Now, Suicune also has another really obvious power pair combo that I discussed with Blastoise in my power pairs video. Blastoise and Vikavolt, they can pretty reliably make at least 2 times a day Clodsire Eclairs, especially if you're running the good camp ticket. Now, this just pushes that further, and it can almost actually make it 3 times a day, which is just crazy when using the advantage of the Suicune. It's only missing on 12 cacao, so theoretically, if you stockpile just a little bit of coffee to make this a little bit more reliable, and then just stockpiled like a decent amount of cacao, let's say 100. Oh, that's coffee. You can tell that I don't ever edit. Then it actually can reliably make with only just a little bit of cacao stockpiled. So 4.7 million strength on Cyan Beach, and if we even just take away that favored berry water, we can see that at any island with maxed out island bonus, it would be hitting almost 4 million Snorlax strength, which is insane to think about, with just these two making the meal with a little bit of stockpiled cacao. So there's some interesting synergies with this as well, especially since you can run a Feraligatr to fill that last spot and get the 3 Pokemon synergy. Now, other notable things with Suicune. Tail farming. Now, this is something that I don't recommend anybody do because it is a bit out there and it requires a lot more investment than I think it is worth it. But I'd be remiss not to mention it because it is kind of a fun idea. If you just want to stockpile as many tails as possible for an event week, as fast as humanly possible, I think this is one of the best teams you can create for stockpiling tails. Suicune has nice synergy with Vaporeon. Well, Vaporeon is a skills mod. It doesn't necessarily synergize with it the best. The Pokemon that synergize with the Legends main skill the best are Ingredient Specialists and Berry Specialists. And Vaporeon is a skill specialist, so is Slowking and Slowbro. But what's interesting here is Tails. Vaporeon, with its main skill, gives Tails. If we look at its main skill, it's predicted to produce about 7.8 of every ingredient every day. If we look at Slowking here and Slowbro, through their just regular ingredient productivity, if you get some ingredient finding subskills on them, they produce about 31 per day, and then an additional 14, basically 15 almost, off of what they're gaining from Suicune's procs. And then you could throw in a Ditto on here, which interestingly has a really funny main skill that can mimic another skill on the team. Which, something very nice about this, with Slowking and Slowbro, they're actually proccing Energizing Cheer quite a bit, keeping the team topped off. And Ditto occasionally procs it as well because of Transform skill copy, being able to make a little bit more energy. So between these three, if you max out all their main skill levels, now this is the biggest drawback. This is a boatload of skill seeds to dump into this team. But Ditto can also sometimes duplicate Suicune's skill. Now, it doesn't have any normal types to go alongside of it to boost its main skill, but it's interesting that it can also happen, creating a little bit more flat number of helps on the entire team. So, and it also has Tails itself in the ingredient list to take advantage of Suicune's main skill. And it can also duplicate Vaporeon's skill to create random ingredients as well. Overall, this team, extremely synergistic if you're just looking for the purposes of creating Tails. If you look down here, this is without a good camp ticket, because I figured if you're prepping, you're probably not running a good camp ticket. Without running the good camp ticket, almost 80 Tails per day. That is crazy. You could fill your entire bag. Well, let's see, it's 700. 700 is how much bag space you have. In just 9 days, you could fill your entire bag with Tails. Now, that'd be pointless and excessive, but it's just a funny idea. I don't actually recommend anybody do this because, like I said, if you're a Mega Whale and you have a ton of main skill seeds, maybe think about it just for the fun of it. But it's impractical, but just an interesting idea and concept to put out there. Additionally, I want to talk about Suicune because Suicune theoretically has the best stats as a generalist, or potential for being like general use without any synergy, because it procs the most of the three. It's got the slightly highest proc rate. It's very close, very close. They compete with each other, but Suicune is technically the closest to getting the most number of procs per day, depending on what stats you have set. But it also has the strongest flat berry type. So theoretically, it's got the like base value berry, which the number of helps higher base value berries more than lower base value berries. So it's theoretically got the best idea of general usage. So if you were to compare it on a more berry finding focused team for general use, then how does it compare? Well, if we just compare running this Suicune compared with along with a bunch of berry finders and a Gardevoir, compared to running an Ampharos in the same role, it does perform worse. And Suicune theoretically has the best option. Now, if we make the same comparison, but now just give it just one for Alligator to synergize a bit better, and even if we replace the one that has the strongest base value berry in the Altaria, because Altaria has Dragon Berry, which is the strongest base value berry in the game, it does come out to be actually... Oh, whoops. What is... Wrong team, sorry. It actually does come out to be almost the same. But obviously, berry generalists are going to be worse than the skill generalists, like we discussed before, where they're getting like 2.8 million. So, it's like, there are better generalist options, but if you're relying more on berry generalists that are looking at stronger berries, then you might be able to make good usage out of it in general usage, but I'd say as long as you have one other Pokemon to synergize with it, maybe two. Maybe Entei could have better use case for this, because it could have Typhlosion and Ninetales, instead of just for Alligator, or you could maybe... Let's see. If we turn this for Typhlosion into a Croconaw... Once again, we're doing it live here. Croconaw with a ribbon. It does make it a little bit better. 2.3 million. So still significantly weaker than other generalist options, but if it's what you got, it's what you got, and if it's what you've invested main skill seeds into, it's what you've invested main skill seeds into. So it might be worth consideration in some circumstances, but the best way to know is really to run the Rain on X calculations yourself. So that's what I'd say. Against whatever your other options are, as far as using it for general purposes. Now, moving on to Raikou. This is actually my second time filming the Raikou portion of this video because I realized after I was done recording all of it that I forgot to give Raikou in all of these assessments any sub-skills. So it was just getting nerfed compared to the other ones. And it was still doing pretty well. But I had to go back and redo all the comparisons because I thought I need to be fair to him. So, let's see how Raikou pairs up. So, Raikou. It's very unique in the fact that it has a healer. A reliable healer, energy for everyone healer, in its roster of Pokemon that it can pull from. Now, that means that it only takes one other unique species, in order to surpass that minimum threshold of 3 species to gain the most from the species bonus. And you can see that is very powerful. Even just running Raikou, Pawmot, and 3 Raichus, we're getting 4.1 million. Now, if we compare this to just 4 Raichus and a Pawmot at the Old Gold Power Plant, it's significantly stronger. 300,000 per week, roughly, difference. So, Raikou immediately proves itself to potentially be worthwhile at the Old Gold Power Plant if you have synergies with it. Now, what if we try to maximize the benefits from its main skill? Well, it still comes out stronger than just using a Raikou and 4 Raichus, but because the opportunity cost of using a Pichu, it is significantly weaker than just taking the advantage, or just the Raikou and 3 Raichus and a Pawmot. Now, something that I also will say, this might be kind of difficult to justify running 3 Berry Specialists. I usually say this is not worthwhile to try and invest up this many Berry Specialists of the same typing, same species for that matter. But Raichu is one that you can justify it a bit more. Pichu and Pikachu are both fairly common spawns, so it's easy to catch multiple good ones compared to other species. Additionally, you'll get a lot of candies for them because they spawn. Pichu spawns on Slumbering, and Pikachu spawns on Snoozing. They're at a lot of the islands as well, so and a lot of people like to send Pikachu candy just because it is such a powerful Pokemon. So I find that you get a lot of Raichu candy, or Pikachu candy, and can typically actually, if any Pokemon can split invest, Pikachu is one of the best candidates for it. So this is actually maybe kind of feasible to do something like this. Now, I wouldn't recommend it with Pichu because, like I said, it does come in weaker than just running a bunch of Raichu. But if you have a pretty good... But it does come in better to run 1 Pikachu compared to running all the Raichu, which, as you can see here, 4.15 versus 4.13. It's a little bit better to get the 2,000-hour Pikachu with a ribbon, because Pikachu is actually not that bad in this game if you have the maxed out ribbon. Now, something very interesting else to discuss, though, is that Halloween Hat Pikachu exists as another Berry Specialist option for Raikou to be run alongside. Now, it is one of the hardest hunts in the game because it is exclusive to a single week out of the year. Hopefully they keep bringing it back every year because it is actually... For those that use Raikou, it is actually a pretty meta-relevant Pokemon. You can see here that it actually performs better when you run a Pikachu, a Raichu, a Halloween Hat Pikachu, a Pawmot, and a Raikou, significantly better than even the best combination from before by a pretty substantial amount. So if you run Raikou, then go crazy during the Halloween event because it's the only week out of the year that you're going to have the option to catch this guy. And if you can catch one with even just Berry Finding S alone, it's going to make a great addition to any Raikou teams that you're basing things around. You should also be on the hunt for a Pawmot, because if you're running Raikou, like, Pawmot is one of the best, most synergistic things. I probably should have actually included Raikou and Pawmot in my Power Pairs video. One of you guys mentioned that in the comments. Shout out to whoever that was again, because I didn't think to mention this, because I was thinking about it more for this video. I didn't even think about it for the Power Pairs video, but they definitely make a good Power Pair as like a core for healing and support. Now, and if we compare it to not running the Pikachu, and running another Raichu because Raichu's better, it actually comes out weaker. So it is best to run the ribboned Pikachu. And even if we compare the ribbon Pikachu team... Oh, sorry, wrong team. There's too many teams I have saved here. Even if we run it as a 500-hour Pikachu instead, it's still about the same as running another Raichu. 4.17 mil versus 4.117 mil. So it's a little bit stronger still, even with a Pikachu with just a 500-hour ribbon, which is much, much more achievable. And if we bump it down to just no ribbon boost, it's actually still stronger as just a Pikachu, even without a ribbon at all. So it is worthwhile to consider running Pikachu alongside a Raikou if you have the right team for it, but it's a bit difficult to get. Now, if we aren't at the old gold power plant, let's say, and we don't have that synergy, we're still getting about 2.3 million, still reaching Master 9 at the old gold power plant, with just this team alone, just running, not even thinking about meal, just running it for the whim of it. That's pretty substantial. There are better things you can do with your time and your resources. There are better teams, but it is kind of nice to have just a single team that you don't have to think about to throw on. But something very interesting about Raikou specifically. Now, Raikou, this skill, it synergizes best with non-skill specialists, and unfortunately, Raikou, it pairs with a lot of skill specialists. We have Ampharos, who's one of the best generalists in the game, but once again, it's not going to really be able to take advantage of Raikou's main skill, unless maybe if you have Berry Finding S. Jolteon, who's not only a skill specialist, but also contributes more to the problem of running a lot of electric types with a weaker berry, which, one thing that it doesn't have going for it, also, it's a lot of electric types rely on a high speed because the berry is naturally weaker. So, really, the skill is theoretically the worst to pair with electric types compared to the base strength of the Leppa berry, which is 27, or the Oran berry, the water berry, which is 31. Compared to 25, it is the weakest. It is the second weakest berry in the game, or third weakest. Only stronger than the flying type berry and the bug type. Where is bug type? Lum berry, 424. So it is a significantly weaker berry, which means it doesn't synergize very well with the skill to begin with. Additionally, skill specialists don't synergize well with the skill, and Dedenne is one that synergizes with cooking, and a Raikou-focused team isn't going to necessarily be focused around cooking, because you're looking more to force as many berries and ingredients as possible. Pawmot is great. It's great that it's got a healer available to it, a reliable healer, and the fact that it's got a couple berry specialist options with Pikachu, with a ribbon, with Raichu, with Pikachu, Halloween hat, it gives it some things going for it, but it's definitely one of the more complicated ones to deal with. But it does have Luxray as an ingredient specialist, and as we can see with the other two, with Blastoise and with Charizard, if it can just get a power partner for a power pair, then it can make a good amount of strength by being able to produce a strong meal. And I was going through the meals, and it was difficult to come up with something because Luxray's got a very weird list. Tomatoes and oils feel synergistic, but most of the synergies that exist with it are lower rank meals like the Spore Mushroom Salad, which you're really not gaining that much strength out of. Additionally, and you can do it. You could run it alongside a Gengar or a Quagsire. Quagsire synergizes pretty well with the main skill. But, and up here, we have, oil doesn't go with tomatoes. Oil goes with tomatoes and green grass salad, but there's no power pair partner with corn and tomatoes for an ingredient specialist. You can supplement a little bit with, if you have the right skill specialist, maybe with Jolteon supplementing milk and Raichu supplementing apples, Pikachu supplementing apples or eggs. Then maybe you could get a Blissey in there to make the eggs for the last thing, but this is going to be pretty difficult to do unless you have just the right ingredient list. So I really wouldn't recommend hunting for this necessarily on the Luxray. And there's really nothing for tomatoes or oil in the desserts until you get all the way down to Explosion Popcorn. So coming up with a power pair duo for Raikou was very, very difficult to do. But I did notice something. And that was when I opened my mind to a C ingredient. Now, typically, we don't really consider C ingredients. They're kind of usually troll options. And I would generally consider the C ingredient on Luxray to be a troll option for most. But if you have a good Raikou for it to synergize with, I think there is potential here. If you're running a Raikou team, there might be consideration here. Because if we look at Hidden Power Perk Up Stew, Hidden Power Perk Up Stew takes tomatoes and coffee. And then that can be made by Luxray with the AAC list. And then it takes soybeans and mushrooms. Which, once again, I couldn't really think of any Pokemon that makes soybeans and mushrooms until I remembered, wait, Golem. Golem has a C ingredient of mushroom, and it makes soybeans at base. So, I was like, is there potential here? And it's interesting because Raikou's main skill, it synergizes very well with Golem. Golem is the perfect Pokemon for this specific build of something, because it is a much slower Pokemon that relies on a much higher ingredient rate for producing ingredients to balance it. So forcing a flat number of helps is a much bigger boost to Golem than it would be for other Pokemon. It produces a shocking amount of soybeans with 91 here, as you can see, between Raikou's main skill as well as its own natural production, with like an additional 52 mushrooms. So overall, it's able to come really close to making enough mushrooms. It does make enough soybeans, and the Luxray, taking advantage of Raikou's main skill while also synergizing with it, it's able to produce the amount of coffee and tomatoes necessary for Hidden Power Perk Up Stew, and it can almost reliably make it. Now, even if you're just willing to stockpile, let's say, just a few... Now, I just realized. This reset. Give me a moment. I had some technical difficulties between clips here. If we're able to just stockpile, say, 80 mushrooms, or let's say 100 mushrooms. If I just throw in 100 mushrooms in here, it can reliably... so you just need to stockpile 100 mushrooms for whenever you get a curry week, run a good camp ticket, and it makes almost 5 million Snorlax strength with a maxed out island bonus, and that's assuming that all these Pokemon are level 60, just by running the Raichu. Now, that's at the Old Gold Power Plant. If we remove the Electric Berry, it's still making almost 4 million strength, which is great. I mean, that clears Master 20 at the first 3 islands, I believe. Maybe not top, but at least Greengrass and Cyan. To be able to do that without synergizing Type Berry at all is very, very impressive. And can it do it at top? Let's see. It can't quite clear Master 20, but it gets you to Master 19 if you can make this team and make it work. So maybe an AAC Golem should be on a hunt list for somebody who has a good Raikou, and especially an AAC Luxray to pair with it, because this is a very interesting combo for anyone that's running Raikou, in my opinion. So, that is an overview of the Legendary Beasts and how one might go about thinking how to work with their main skill. Now, obviously this isn't perfect. I've run with theoretical sub-skills, and realistically, whatever you have in your box is going to play very differently from box to box to box. Consider what you have in your box. Try to use the ideas I've proposed in this video to theory craft in Rain on X to see what would work best with your Pokemon, because everyone's Pokemon is different, and maybe your Raikou is better than the ones that I've shown here. Maybe your Suicune is better than what I've shown here. Maybe you already have all the Pokemon for the tail team that I suggested, or that I joked about, and you just need to invest, and that's what you want to do, and you have the seeds, and you just never realized it before. Run them through Rain on X, see how it comes out, see if it works for you, and then start thinking about what's going to synergize best with your team. So, yeah. If you have enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Down in the description, we'll have a link to come join the Discord. You can hang out with a cool community of people that'll talk about all things Pokemon, Sleep, and the like. I've got the join button. If you enjoy the content that I've been kicking out, feel free to support me in that way if you're financially capable of doing so. I don't have any rewards for paid members, but the option is there if you want to just show your support. And as always, I thank you all for watching and hope that you all have a wonderful day. Bye-bye now.